Hi everybody and welcome to my channel. In this episode I'm going to be talking about what's in the news today about prison. And again, like yesterday's upload, this will be without edits and I'll be doing more of these videos over the coming weeks. I'll be doing 2 to 3 videos a week talking about what's happening in the prison news today. So the first one that just popped up, which I had a look on, is about Wandsworth Prison. And a lot of you that's been following the channel, and obviously the ones that were following the news last week, will have seen when Daniel Khalife escaped from prison. So it says here, 80 Wandsworth prison officers failed to turn up for work on day Daniel Khalife escaped, a minister admits. So Damien Hines says that minimum staffing levels for a safe regime were met. Wandsworth Prison was understaffed the day terror suspect Daniel Khalife escaped, the government has admitted. On September the 6th, the day of his escape, just 61% of staff due to be at work were on duty, Minister of Justice figures have shown. So on the day that he's escaped, I think, what day was it on? Was it a Monday, I believe? So probably all been out partying on the weekend, haven't turned in for work because they're rough. Because when I've been looking at some of the figures, a lot of the staff are newly employed and they're only young because they're only in their 20s. Some of them are just 21-year-old and they're in prison as prison officers. And at that age, everyone's out on weekends, or the majority of people. So they probably haven't turned in for work on the Monday. But 80 staff is a staggering amount that are missing from work on a Monday to look after a full prison. I mean, a lot of people, especially when you're in your early 20s, don't turn up for work. Maybe it's on a Monday. I know from talking from experience when I've worked in a couple of different factories when I was a teenager before I went to prison. On the Mondays, you hardly ever turn in for work. So the same sort of thing must be happening here, but prison officers should not be going in sick on a Monday, especially 80 staff not turning in on Monday. No wonder he's managed to escape. Probably the screws that are meant to be on the doors, checking underneath vans coming in and out of the prison, were probably the ones that were on sick and they haven't had anyone to fill in. So in the past year, staffing has only reached higher than 64% in 1 month in December 2022, and that was because fewer staff were required on shift for New Year's Eve. The figures were revealed in response to a written parliamentary question submitted by the Labour MP for the area, Rosina Allen-Corn. She asked what proportion of shift slots at Wandsworth Prison were unfilled on the day Khalife managed to leave the grounds by allegedly hiding in a lorry. Justice Minister Damien Hines said on the day 1,594 prisoners were held at HMP Wandsworth and 125 Band 3 prison officers attended their shift. This equates to 61% of all staff who had been due to attend. He said, adding that 80 officers did not turn up for their expected shift on that day. Mr. Hyde said that overall staffing levels were above the minimum staffing level required by the Prison Regime Management Plan to deliver a safe and decent regime, and he pointed out that all staff in the kitchen where Khalife had been working at the time of his escape and the gatehouse were on duty. So that was just what I was on about before when I was saying it's probably the staff at the gatehouse. But according to this, they were all on duty. An initial investigation into Daniel Khalife's escape did not find the staffing level to be a contributing factor. But Miss Allen-Corn, MP for Tooting, accused the government of ignoring warnings about low staffing levels. Where common sense tells you if 80 staff are missing that day, that there's going to be disruption within the prison. I know from first hand when staffing levels are low and you're in prison, you don't get out for your association, you don't get out for your showers, and they try and say it's staff training day or something like that. But even something like that disrupts the prison. And when the prisoners come out for dinner time, it's hard to get them all back behind the door. So imagine if you've got 10 staff on a wing with 100 inmates all getting unlocked, not at the same time because it's landing by landing, but even if you've got 20 inmates getting out for dinner at one point and they're needing to pass messages backwards and forwards, which normally happens, or they need to go and get the drugs off one of the other inmates. They're running up and down the wing. They're not listening to what the staff's saying because they're going to get what they want. And if they're going to the pads, speaking to the other inmates, getting stuff passed in and out the doors, passing notes backwards and forwards, then it's going to cause utter chaos. And like I say, I know firsthand that when the screws are trying to get you back in the pad, there's a lot of disruption. And this is when the lads, if they haven't getting what they want, they'll kick off and they'll not go back behind the door. So then the screws having to wrap the person up, take them down the block, which takes all the staff away from the wing. And the rest of the inmates locked up behind the doors are all going crazy because they're wanting to get out. So it's just a big powder keg waiting to explode. It is deeply concerned that on the day Khalife escaped, just 60% of prison officers turn up for duty. The government must get a grip with such low staff numbers. Mistakes were bound to happen. In the full written statement, the Justice Minister said the government had taken a series of measures to increase prison workforce. He said there were 4,000 more prison officers than in March 2017, with 5,000 more by the mid-2020s. On Friday, a former Director General of National Crime Agency was appointed as the investigator into the prison escape of Khalife. Keith Bristow, QPM, served as the first head of the agency from 2013 to 2016, after spending 5 years as Chief Constable at Warwickshire Police. Khalife was remanded in custody at Westminster Magistrate Court on Monday after allegedly escaping from HMP Wandsworth. Well, there was no allegedly, he did escape. I don't know why it says allegedly when everyone, even the people out here in the community, knows that he did escape. The Ministry of Justice said the investigation would seek to identify shortcomings and ensure lessons are learned to help prevent similar incidents happening in the future. Well, the only people that are going to suffer through this escape and this incident is the prisoners, because the prisoners are going to be locked down more. They're not going to get as much association. If the staffing levels are short, who's going to fall, shall I say, a victim? The prisoners. The prisoners always get the short end of the straw, even though it wasn't their fault. I mean, it was their fault because it was one of the prisoners that escaped. But what I mean is, it wasn't their fault that there was staff shortages. It's not the prisoners' fault that there's not enough staff to take control of the full prison. But it's the prisoners that feel the brunt of it when it's them that are locked up 23 hours a day. And incidents like this, they probably would have been locked down for a few days until he actually got found. So that's enough on that one. I'll move on to the next subject. Man who attempted to smuggle drugs into HMP Berwyn spared jail. So HMP Berwyn is in Wales, and I think it's nicknamed the Super Prison or Supermax Prison because it's that big. A man who attempted to smuggle drugs into HMP Berwyn using his stomach, his shoe, and his clothes has been spared jail. Nicholas Wise, 48, of Bron Derwyd in Newborough on Anglesey, appeared before, can't pronounce this one, Caernarfon Crown Court for sentencing on Wednesday, September the 13th. He previously pleaded guilty to being in possession of drugs during a hearing on the 20th of July. Simon Mintz, prosecuting, told the court that the discovery was made when Wise brought into custody at Caernarfon on an unrelated matter on April 26, 2022. When searched by security there, he was found to have a sock full of tablets and the police were called. It was later discovered that Wise had 50 tablets in his possession that day. 26 were Class A nature Oxycontin and the rest were Class B and C drugs, which will probably have been Buprenorphine. Oh, what's this going on? So that would have been subbies. So he's had 50 tablets, half of them are Oxycontin, and which is nicknamed Oxys, which is a very dangerous drug. They want to be careful taking that sort of medication because I've seen documentaries and stuff where, more so in America, where they're on them Oxys, and a lot of the time they OD on them because they're that powerful. I think they're more powerful than heroin. And the Class C drugs or Class B will be Buprenorphine, which is nicknamed subbies, which is a heroin substitute, which is used to try and get people off heroin, but it's actually more or less used in the same sort of way and the same sort of effects if it's crushed up and sniffed. It says the street value of these were estimated at £154, but was said to be worth a much greater value of £1,385 had they made it inside the prison. Well, I don't know where they're getting those figures from when they've rounded it up to the actual £85. But they are worth a lot of money inside a prison, the subbies. Subbies, depending on which prison you go to and the availability. If there's not many drugs in that prison, one subby tablet can go for up to £100. And then it can be divided up and crushed into about 8 different bits and sold on for. So the value of the subbies are quite extortionate inside of prison. When he later returned for sentencing hearing on May the 10th, he again came prepared with drugs in his possession. What? So he's tried to smuggle drugs into prison? Are they a second? He's tried to smuggle drugs in, and then when he's went back up for sentence and he's had drugs on him again. On that day, the defendant attempted to make it past reception at Berwyn with drugs in his stomach, shoe and clothing. Mr. Mint said that Wise was scanned by officers there and the drugs had been examined by the following morning. Wise was found to have swallowed 64 grams of cannabis and had a further 31 tablets of Class C nature, as well as 2 grams of heroin, 2 grams of cocaine in his shoe, and a knotted package of diazepam in his clothing. All this was worth a street value of £1,431 and over £14,000 had the drugs made it into HMP Berwyn. An impact statement from a staff member at HMP Berwyn, read out in court, said that cases like this give rise to gang culture within prison. The barrister defendant said that Wise maintained throughout that the drugs were for his own personal use and not intended to be smuggled in for a prisoner. He added that the defendant was someone who led a somewhat chaotic lifestyle. A letter from Wise's sister read out in court added that he was someone who has been going round in circles for 30 years and needs long-term rehabilitation and help. Judge Timothy Petts sentenced Wise to a period of 10 months in jail, which was suspended for 80 months, and he must also complete a thinking skills course. The defendant was told that this was his one last opportunity. Judge Petts added, "This is a chance, with the help of probation and your family, to stay out of trouble." Well, I've never heard of someone trying to smuggle that amount of drugs into a prison and getting off with a suspended sentence. Normally, even if you were carrying 6 tablets trying to get into a prison, you're going to get at least a 12-month sentence. But I don't know what the sentence is like down in Wales, but I bet you a lot of people wish they had these sort of judges up in England and Scotland. But a suspended sentence, even if you got caught on the streets with that amount of drugs on your possession and you've been to prison for over 30 years or you've been in trouble for 30 years, I do not think you would get off with a suspended sentence. Right, we've got enough time to do one more, people. Right, I was looking at one before. Whereabouts is it at? Prison guards facing unprecedented threats from thugs behind bars after spike in number of gangsters being locked up. See which prison this is on about this time then. Trade union chiefs warns risk to staff has never been higher because of organised crime groups being jailed. He says the level of threat faced by officers is the worst in the 30 years he's been involved in prisons. So I think this is Scotland use this one. Prison officers in Scotland are facing unprecedented threats and intimidation from organised crime gang members behind bars, a union leader has warned. Phil Fairley, Deputy General Secretary of the Prison Officers Association in Scotland, said the risk to staff has never been higher due to the huge increase in organised criminals in the prison population. Well, I don't know what's changed, but have they not been locking up organised criminals for the past century? Phil Fairley Oh, they've just read that one, sorry. Scottish Prison Service intelligence reports have identified 538 individuals linked to serious and organised crime, which is around 8% of Scotland's total population. Of those, 176 have been linked to 54 serious and organised crime groups. There have been examples of cars belonging to staff being set on fire in car parks, and a number of police investigations are ongoing into threats made to prison officers. The prison population that we hold at the moment is an incredibly challenging mix of prisoners. There is a huge amount of time and staff resources being used to manage the prison's huge increase in organised crime gang numbers that we've got inside prisons. He added, I think the level of threat and intimidation on staff is unprecedented at the moment. It is the worst I have seen in 30 odd years I have been involved in prisons. All staff in prisons recognise every day is a risk, but there are levels. The number of organised crime gangs that we have got in there raises the level of volume of risk staff are confronted with. The risks staff are confronted with. In a report last week, Wendy Sinclair Gibbon, His Majesty's Chief Inspector of Prisons for Scotland, warned that inmate populations will hit unprecedented levels by the end of the year. And like I've mentioned yesterday when I'd done a one on HMP Barlinnie closing down, these prisons are just twice the capacity, because some of them, they've just been built for single man cells and they've got 2 at a cell, and the numbers are just getting outrageous. That's why Barlinnie is closing and they're building another prison, but the other prison that they're building hasn't got any more numbers than what Barlinnie has. So what they need to do is build more prisons, get more staff, but because this is saying that it's becoming more dangerous. Well, what's the difference between now and 10 years ago? It's always been organised crime gangs and dangerous inmates. So unless the inmates are getting more dangerous and because they're all part of the same crime gang, they're sticking together, and all these new staff that are coming in, like I've mentioned previously, are just young and they're undertrained and they're just getting anybody in, because at the end of the day, these prison officers probably don't want to go and work there, especially the old school ones, when they're seeing what's happening with the prisons, because it did used to be a bit of a moral code back in the day where the screws kept out of the way, the cons kept in their own circles, and there was a bit of a what shall we say, understanding where if you don't give them grief, they'll not give you grief. But yes, so that was it. Prison guards facing unprecedented threats. It's probably because the threats are getting reported more, because the old school screws back in the day, they used to get threats as well, but used to give the threats back, and the screws used to dish out their own punishment. If you threatened them, they wouldn't go and make reports about it. They would just go and get the pals, and they'd all just storm the pad, 6 of them, or even 10 of them, storm the pad and batter you all over, and they wouldn't report it. But because things are turning where everything gets reported, there's that many reports getting written up, and it's all turning political, where you can't lay your hands on, like the screws can't lay their hands on prisoners without having to file reports and different things. I think a lot of people preferred it back in the day when if you had trouble with the screws, you just got it on with and got it over and done with, where the screws, like I've just mentioned, would come in, set about you in the pad, you'd probably have a fight with them and then it was all forgetting about. Whereas now, it's all getting reported, and this is why they're saying the numbers are rising, but they're probably just the same as that they've ever been. But I'm going to leave that one there for now, people. Hopefully you enjoyed that content. There will be more coming up every 2 to 3 days. I'll be releasing prison news, going over it. And like I mentioned, there will be no edits. It'll just be straight talking, telling the news, debating on it, and breaking it down, telling you my thoughts on it. I'll be doing that 2 to 3 times a week, along with all my other videos. But remember, if you are enjoying the content, remember to like and subscribe. Enjoy the rest of your day, people. Take care.